Hello and welcome. This lecture is about graphing a square root function. The student will graph a square root function correctly. And so this video to help you understand how the square root function looks like, what ways we can graph it. And actually, I'm going to focus only on one way because we have simple cases right here. So I have the basic square root function, which is f of x equals the square root of x. It's really important that you understand how the basic function for any function looks like, how the graph looks like. It helps you understand how the other function look like. So we're going to graph the basic function, and then we're going to graph g of x, which is the square root of x plus 7. So let's do that. OK, so the basic function, the square root of x, if I want to graph it, I'm going to choose values for x. Remember, it really helps to know what the domain is. And the radicand should be always for the square root function greater than or equal to 0. So the domain is 0 to infinity. That helps you really look at the domain first before you make your table, because if the domain can't take negative numbers, you can't have negative numbers on your table. You'll be wasting your time. So I'm going to start at 0. If x, and you know that x and y is the same as f of x. So if we start at x is 0, so the square root of 0 is 0. If x is 1, the square root of 1 is 1. If x is 4, the square root of 4 is 2. If x is 9, the square root of 3. If x is 16, 4, and so on. So I kind of chose numbers that are perfect squares just to make it easier. You don't have to. Sometimes you can approximate the square root if you can't really come up with perfect squares. So I'm going to start right here. If x is 0, y is 0, so that's the first point on the graph. And then if x is 1, y is 1. So 1 and 1 is on the graph. And if x is 4, y is 2. So there is 2 and 2. And if x is 9, y is 3. So 9 and 3. And I'm going to join them in a smooth curve because it's going to continue to go up and over to the right in a smooth curve. So we're just going to join those points. And that is the graph of the square root function. F of x equals the square root of x. It's really important that you can graph this from memory at any time. Now we're going to graph g of x here. And g of x, let's look at the domain again. X plus 7 has to be greater than or equal to 0. That means x has to be greater than or equal to negative 7. So we start here at negative 7. That would be an appropriate point to start. If x is negative 7, so we're going to go negative 7 plus 7. Negative 7 plus 7 is 0. And so that's the square root of 0 is 0. If we use negative 6 plus 7 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. And if we do negative 3 for x, negative 3 plus 7 is 4. And so the square root of 4 is 2. And if it's 2, x is 2. 2 plus 7 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. And if x is 9, the square root of 9 plus 7 is the square root of 16, and that's a 4. And we can continue this fashion, but again, you can do approximations if you like. So we're going to start at negative 7 here, because the domain goes from negative 7 to infinity. So when x is negative 7, y is 0. So that's my first point, negative 7 and 0. Negative 6 and 1. There's negative 6 and 1. Negative 3 and 2. There's negative 3 and 2 right here. 2 and 3. There's 2 and 3 right here. And we could do 9 and 4. There's 9 and 4 right here. 9 and 4. And so we join them together using a smooth curve to get the graph of g of x equals the square root of x plus 7. Later on, when you learn about transformations and translations, you could use those methods to tell that here the x has to be shifted, or the graph has to be shifted 7 units to the left. So that's the difference between the basic function and the other function. So once you understand what the basic function looks like, you can really use translations to do to graph them. But this video is about just graphing them. Just graphing them by using a table. And now you try this one, find values for x to put in the table and find the y values to see, and try to predict what x has to be, what's the domain for that function to start at. Because once you find what the domain is, then you could graph it easily. Okay, see you next time.